Okay, good morning, folks, and welcome to this session. It's always a challenge, I think. First session in the morning, people will be drifting in as we carry on. But I think we'll get started and give you an opportunity to listen to what this particular panel has to say about the challenges of drawing technological solutions into the immediate aftermath of critical events that take place in cities around the world. In my 20-odd years of working within the United Nations system and the non-governmental world in countries that are affected by disasters and war and economic crisis and political crisis and various other types of destructive and damaging events, it's been an interesting observation that up until even today, the presence of technological capacity to facilitate a quicker recovery process, to embed recovery programming in the concepts and principles of resilience, has been absent. Not completely. We saw some interesting things in Haiti after the earthquake in 2010. We saw a few interesting things taking place in the recent earthquakes and typhoons in Southeast Asia. But by and large, this part of the international development arena has a dearth of applicable, usable, portable technology that can help in connecting people, that can help connecting people to government, that can help in distributing resources for humanitarian support, and these types of things. Today's panel will answer the value of having this and perhaps some of the potential for the future for this kind of technology to assist in resilient recovery. I'm very, very pleased to introduce to you the panel. I'll tell you a bit more about them as they come up for their presentations, but we have very distinguished people and friends and new friends from the Barcelona City Council, Gabàs, Alfonso Govela, an old friend and a pioneer in the world of digital governance, Mr. Safder Nazir, coming from Huawei, which, as you know, is one of the key sponsors of the technology that we're all enjoying here at the Smart Cities Expo and World Conference, and Maria-Cristina Marinescu, who is working with the Barcelona Supercomputer Center, a new partner of UN Habitat and one where we're actually looking at practical solutions to the challenges that I just mentioned. I've been instructed to tell you about Ask and Vote. Has everybody here participated in events previous to this one? Show of hands, yes? Anybody need to know information about Ask and Vote? I would like to encourage you to use this to pose your questions throughout the presentations for the panelists, and we'll come to those at the conclusion of all of the presentations. You simply need to use your smartphone, connect to the Huawei Connect Wi-Fi system, open the Smart Cities Expo and World Congress application, and click on the Ask and Vote option. And your questions will go directly to a moderator who will be collecting those questions and present them to me to present to our panel at the conclusion of the presentations. Okay? All right. Without any further ado, let me introduce first Ms. Ares Gabàs from the Barcelona City Council. Ares is the arms and legs of the Resilience Board within Barcelona City Council, a well-practiced and close ally and partner of UN Habitat's City Resilience Profiling Program. Ares, please, the stage is yours.
Good morning. I'm going to give an overview of the approach of Barcelona city to urban resilience and how we are applying the use of technology in risk management and to improve the capacity of analysis of the city. We all know what resilience is and that it consists in implementing a set of measures and actions in order to prevent risk, if possible, and when not, to limit their impact and recover as soon as possible to a situation of normality regarding a city functionality. The tools we are working on are mainly focused in improving the analysis capacity we have to detect and reduce the vulnerabilities of the city, on the one hand, and on the other hand, in improving the efficiency in the management of incidents that happen in the city by enhancing coordination among stakeholders and also by providing useful information to support decision-making and improve as well the knowledge we have on possible interactions between services to limit their impact. So this is a diagram of how we like to explain the building resilience process in Barcelona, which is actually a continuous improvement process that starts by risk management that we do in the Center of Operations of Public Space and Urban Services in coordination with the rest of centers of operations in the city, public and private. This, with all the information that we have on the incidents in the city and also other layers of information, we are working to develop the tools that help us improve our capacity of analysis. And this is the platform, the municipal platform we call the resilience. Well, actually, the resilience analysis platform is a very basic, very neutral name. And it's aimed at improving the knowledge we have on the city and its state of performance. And with all the information, we can obtain a diagnose and have an idea of what the problems are, so that we can implement the last step, which is actually the one that adds real value and where it all started here in Barcelona, is the implementation of risk reduction projects in the resilience board in order to reduce or eliminate the risks that we have detected, so that we can go to when we do this is like a spiral of continuous improvement. When we go back to the situation of the incidences in the center of operations, ideally, we have reduced the amount and range of severity of the incidences occurring in the city. This is a very theoretical idea because we all know the nature of risk is very changing. So, and one important thing is also to incorporate the learning. Learning is in the definition of resilience. There is an implicit process of learning from past situations that we have suffered, so that we get stronger and we don't suffer from the same problems in the future. So we need to be able to learn from all these situations. So the Center of Operations of the city, I was mentioning before, this is a picture of the 28 centers of operations in the city. The red ones are municipal ones, but we also have public but non-municipal centers of operations, private control centers in charge of basic utilities. And it is important that we have a coordination between them. And this is something that we are enhancing we are enhancing the role of the Center of Operations of Public Space and Urban Services, because it is a key element to improve the coordination with the rest of centers of operations and stakeholders, and also acts as a communication joint. So it's not just at operative level, but also at a communicative level to inform all the actors in the city that need to be aware of certain critical situations. It's also aimed at improving the capacity of response of the city and the continuity. The main goal is to assure or guarantee the continuity of service of the city. And finally, improve the knowledge we have on how the city is performing. So one of the projects we're working on to enhance this collaboration I was mentioning is, for instance, the protocols we have with the basic utility providers. We have agreed with them that the city council, the city needs to be aware whenever there's an incident that can have an important impact in a basic service of the city needs to be aware, and also act as this joint to communicate with other stakeholders that can possibly be affected by these incidents. So basically how it works is that the utility provider, we have agreed a set of situations that we think are critical or potentially critical, and that imply a lack of supply, either to an important number of users or for a long time, or are affecting a sensitive client, such as a critical infrastructure or a critical facility, or potentially can have an impact on other services, or if they have an impact on the public space, or for instance affecting mobility, or the security of the public space. This could be the case maybe of a manhole cover missing. And with this is mainly an organizational or procedural process. But it needs to be hand in hand with the technology that supports and helps implementing this process. And this is a tool or a function, an application we are actually working on to improve the communication with all the stakeholders. On the other hand, we have the resilience platform, which is this platform for analysis of resilience that aims at providing an overview, a comprehensive overview of the city. The platform gathers relevant information from the different city systems at different levels, from the infrastructure, but also the service, the incidences, and enables, so having this information together with other important information on the configuration of the city, the population, the location of critical facilities or infrastructures, having all this information structured and gathered within a same repository allows us to correlate and overlap them in a cartographic base, providing very useful information. So basically, what we're aiming at is improving the analysis capacity and the knowledge that we have. So the tool, the platform, allows us for a holistic approach to the governance and integrates and shares information not just within the municipality, but it's an open tool that we can use with the rest of stakeholders from different levels of administration, public stakeholders from different levels of administration, but also the private ones. So these are some examples of some services that we have already implemented. For instance, in this case, we have from the instances we have from a certain degree of criticity, we can have them mapped on the city and also overlap them with the infrastructures from transport systems, electricity service, water supply service, gas, etc., so that we can have information on what potentially can be affected by these incidents, or in case we don't know the origin of this problem, have more information on what could be the reason or where can this problem have been origin. Another use that we are doing, another one of the tools that we have implemented in the platform is to improve the management of the incidences directly managed by the Center of Operations. This is an example, and we can see some of the incidences are directly managed by the Center of Operations, others are derived to the service, and the Center of Operations keeps track of them until they are solved. But with the ones that are directly managed by the Center of Operations, having them mapped and being able to track also whether they have been they have been solved or not with this timeline that we have on the left-hand corner, allows to filter the incidences in time, so we can have an image of what are the incidences that are taking longer than they should, And this, finally, what's important, that it has resulted in a 40% reduction of the stock of incidences of the Center of Operations. The stock of incidences is the picture of the incidences once a week, so the number of operations of incidences that are active. It has been reduced by 42%. And also, the average resolution times has also been reduced to 60%. So finally, the important message is that this information is really useful because it translates into real value. So, and I think I'm going to finish with this because I'm from fine. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, thanks very much, Aris. Some pretty important takeaways from that presentation. The sophistication of the system here in Barcelona is one that's evolved over a period of, well, almost 7 years, I guess, now. But some very important principles come out. The first is the absolute critical importance of having information that you gather through a diagnostic process, you analyze, and then you use as a means of informing planning and operational activities of a local government and its partners, it's the stakeholders. Three other key things to keep in mind. The concepts of the local government as a platform for coordination, for communication, and ensuring the continuity of urban functions through various different kinds of crisis. And it's on this issue of communication and the overarching learning umbrella of the Resilience Department of the City of Barcelona is a good segue to introduce to you Alfonso Govela Thomae, who is the co-founder of Digital Civics, which is an organization that engages primarily with youth, but not exclusively. And he's working directly in engaging young people in urban processes, in urban development processes, and even in urban design processes. So please help me to welcome Alfonso. The podium is yours, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, colleagues. And thank you for being here. Can you hear me? Okay. Because I cannot hear my colleagues on the stage. Okay. Aris talked about platform that keeps knowledge and uses knowledge. We're going to see now an option where that platform can be used by the people. We have to realize three major events of this year: Brexit, the no to the peace agreement under the conditions that Colombia reached, and the elections in the United States. If we don't realize that people do want to participate, okay, with those three, then we are totally missing the point of this Congress in terms of citizens and citizens making cities, okay? People do want to participate, and if they participate the way they've done, is because the options for participation are too spaced away and are only related to law and elections. But there are three more forces in the cities that we can use to have effective change. We can have law, but we can have also the market, social norms, and code, okay? So we can enforce change between elections in a periodic, permanent way that engages citizens to do things, not only to select from predefined options. And that's where we have been working at. What do we need for that? First, we need very clear challenges. Challenges that are relevant for each of us. Challenges that are defined absolutely clear and that are shared in a consensus. Resilience, no doubt, is one of those challenges. In fact, we have to now show our resilience for those 3 votes of this year, Brexit, Colombia, USA elections. How do we recover? And we recover by participating. And we do this, or we've done this, what I'm going to show you, by engaging children and youth. Everyone talks in planning in terms of, long-term visions, 2030, 2040, 2050. Well, the kids that are 5 to 10 are going to be our citizens of those long-term plans. So if we start helping them to become citizens, digital citizens, now, okay, we are effectively changing what the cities could be in their inner functioning for the years to come. We've done it through 3 programs: City Builder, City Maker, City Changer. City Builder, we have engaged 19,000 children in Mexico we teach them to build public space playing with Minecraft. A short video, okay. We let them speak in a language that they know. We give them an enabling environment where they can play, and we let them build, design, not select among options, but design real proposals for a real public space. This is the last example. We did it in Mexico City and 15 cities across the country. We won a Guinness World Record for the largest numbers of children and teenagers designing public space. We selected a park right by the USA border with Mexico. And we thought that for a wall on one side, we would have a park, a public space designed by 6,400 children. The projects were quite good. They were done in 1 hour. I've been a professor at School of Architecture, and I've never had any of my thesis students produce a design, okay, it's a preliminary design, in an hour. So this is just to show you a bit of the quality. From the 6,000, 1,000 were relevant. The winners are going to be built in reality in Mexicali. For youngsters, we engage youngsters to solve urban issues through mobile technology. They develop apps. And something we found is that if youth likes to consume technology, there's something else they like more than consuming technology, and that is producing technology. If we gave youth the possibility to create technology, they engage in a way that is very, very impressive. I'm going to show you 2 videos because it's a short time. One is the City Changer, engaging youth with urban issues with mobile technology. And the other ones are the City Makers. Barcelona is famous for the Fab Labs. Fab Labs is a movement from my school. I'm an MIT nerd. I would like to be a geek now and keep evolving, but you never know what evil lurks, okay, in the hearts of men. But the City Maker is like a Fab Lab, but in poor countries where there's no money to invest in Fab Labs. We're using resources that are available, and we put them together. So what do we do with this 2, City Changer and City Maker? We have hack days, make days. We ask youth to come from all ranges of society, urban and rural. We've had plenty. It's also massive. We have in India 1,200 youngsters came. We're having the next one in Guangzhou, okay, in 2 weeks from now. We've had it in South America with Dan for the World Urban Forum on Urban Resilience. But also, we have people of all ages, as you can see, and all crafts. This is a craftsman from Yucatan who come together to make things. So kids can build, youngsters can change through software, through code, And people of all ages, I like to say 8 to 88, okay, can make products to make life in cities better, okay? So what does digital civics do? Well, first, if you come from a Mac Galaxy and are asked to change your presentation to PowerPoint, you lose a lot, I know, but sorry. Basically, what we do is we let people connect, relate, and act through platforms of knowledge, which you already have, ecosystems of interaction, where they can make things, which we have to do now on top of your platform. And as a result, we get interfaces of governance. We have apps, we have products, we have designs, okay? And this can be used to anticipate data collection, to buffer through increasing knowledge, to adapt educating responses, and to change by training abilities to foreplan and to act. And with this, I think I'm 30 seconds before my time. I'm done.
Thanks very much, Alfonso. So again, some real critical key points here. The principle that that knowledge can be consumed and produced in a very organic way, in a way that doesn't have a fixed framework within which innovation, knowledge, and engagement can be, let's say, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm looking for the means by which Alfonso is using this technology to create this kind of spontaneous and organic engagement that also has knowledge and technology options to engage that kind of knowledge generation with government. The other principle is, of course, planning a 50-year urban development trajectory with people my age is kind of, obviously, you and I don't have a vested interest necessarily as much as the 8 to 20-year-olds do. So bringing those people into the process of development trajectory definition now is a very critical and underutilized approach to urban development, and we're very, very happy to be able to work with Alfonso and other things. So now, sort of going from the city to the child to a technology company that is one of the largest in the world. It is producing technology that's being consumed not just here, but it's being consumed in many different types of organization and in various different pursuits around the world. I'd like to introduce to you Safder Nazir, who heads the Huawei Smart City and Internet of Things Center of Excellence based in Dubai. He's held various leadership roles in global companies around the world and has over 20 years experience across the world in industry verticals, including real estate, smart cities, and smart grids. Safder, please.
Good morning. And yes, I do get that feeling that maybe no one can hear me and the mics aren't working, but I hope you can hear me out there. So firstly, I'm honored to be here with these distinguished panelists, and also I'm sure there's going to be some great questions probably from the audience. For a technology company like Huawei, it's important for us to be able to see how is technology used. And what I'm going to share today is hopefully some of the things that at least Huawei is trying to do to help address some of these issues, and at the same time try to listen and understand of what more needs to happen in the future. So with that, and I will try and keep to my time. I'm sure I haven't used 2.5 minutes already, but never mind. So in terms of natural disasters, so of course we hear of many things in the recent past as earthquakes, tsunamis, and other disasters such as flooding and so on. We may well be seeing increased numbers of these. Some of that, I'm sure, is due to better detection capabilities. With a greater population around the world, we're actually aware of things happening and able to detect things which we probably couldn't do in the past. What percentages through increased detection and what's actually through changes in the nature, I'll leave other people to better judge that. However, it is a significant issue that's happening, and it's creating a greater problem the more we become digitized, in the sense that if we lose our digital records, then we've really got nothing. If our records became a little bit wet, maybe we could dry them out. So we need better approaches to ensuring that our technology is resilient, certainly if our lives and processes depend on it. So how do we approach disasters? So there's, I'd put it to, there's probably three separate areas to look at. One is what happens before the incident, early warning systems and the preparation that we might do before that. There's how do we deal with the incident once it happens in terms of response times. I'll talk a little bit more about recovery times and so on later on. How do we collaborate? And Ara talked about the different agencies that perhaps might be involved, including utilities, but also first responders. And then what do we do after? How do we get back to our normal state? And how long does it take us to reach our normal state? Dan was talking earlier while we were just having a brief before the session about the number of years it's taken in some countries to recover basic information. So let me play a short video, and hopefully we've got sound.
Inform the mayor. Notify the emergency command team immediately.
Mr. Mayor, an earthquake was reported in Zone A this morning. The monitoring center reported it at 8 a.m. Its magnitude is unknown.
Is the magnitude confirmed yet?
Yes, it's been confirmed as a magnitude 7 on the Richter scale. The monitor shows that many buildings and homes have collapsed.
Communications are down. We have lost the signal.
The rescue cannot be delayed by the loss of communication. We must deploy the emergency communication system immediately.
The road is blocked. Deploy the ELTE emergency communication system. Initiate the satellite link with the command center.
Right away, sir.
ELTE wireless cameras outside and broadcasting live from the disaster area. The building was badly damaged. Near total collapse of all buildings. Most of the communication base stations have been damaged or destroyed. Rescue teams are working with limited communications. This is creating slowdowns and limiting their effectiveness.
We can't let that slow our progress. We will arrange for an airdrop of ELT Rapid to the disaster area. That will restore communications.
Mr. Mayor, all ELTE Rapids have been deployed and are operational. The rescue teams are now well organized.
virtualized dispatch, fast response, informed decisions. Huawei ELTE, the world's first broadband trunking solution.
Okay, so from Huawei's perspective, this is something that's real and it's really done. And part of the culture of Huawei, we actually operate in over 170 countries and territories. And actually, in places like Japan, our team stayed on the ground and we actually helped to deploy some of these solutions. In fact, if you go out to the exhibition side, you'll see that actually Barcelona police are using the exact same system. So I managed to take a picture with some of the policemen who came over to our booth, and they actually, the Barcelona police have a stand as well, and they're actually showing the ELT rapid system that they have as well. So this will certainly help in getting communication up and going again, especially in this day and age where we're so dependent on it. Now, in addition to that is the data. So as we digitize ourselves and our records, what happens if we lose our data center? And there are two key points around resilience in this, which is the recovery point objective, or the RPO, and the recovery time objective. And the balance between these two is what sets our data center and data recovery strategy. Whether we do that is in terms of high availability within a location, intercity and intracity, and even inter-country data centers to allow us that recovery. And some people will call that private cloud in a sense. So these are key factors in working with cities to understand how much loss can they tolerate. And based on that, develop a strategy for allowing data recovery to happen so we don't have to wait several years to get basic records back. In terms of what Huawei has done, it's been actually how the company was founded just over 25 years ago, was in enabling basics of communication to happen in rural areas and in places where there was no connectivity. So it's become part of our DNA to develop such type of solutions to solve real problems, and we're not done. So our objective is to see what else can we do and how else do we allow and enable cities to be more resilient to such things in the future, and of course make people's lives happier. And that was all from me. Thank you very much. Just about all the time.
Safder, thank you very much. Wow. Once again, though, thinking through some of the key points here, the use of technology to create platforms for collaboration and connect people and services and resources is it's fantastic to see this this kind of technology deployed in many countries around the world. And I think we need to see more of this within the humanitarian community to rely on this as a tool for helping collaborate. In the case of Haiti, for example, 400 organizations showed up within the first 9 days of the earthquake in 2010. Okay, imagine trying to coordinate this in a way that provides the benefit primarily to the victims and survivors of these kinds of disasters. The other really critical issue is around the protection of information. Whether that information exists today on a piece of paper or whether it exists as bytes somewhere. In the aftermath of crisis, we see one of the toughest challenges to recovery is the recovery of critical information, particularly around issues like land rights and legal solutions, that type of thing. And on this topic of data, and particularly on the topic of big data, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Maria-Cristina Marinescu, who's here representing one of Barcelona's key resource and assets, and one of the, I think it's one of the largest supercomputing centers, and has one of the largest supercomputing capacities anywhere in the world. to talk a little bit more about the capacity and role of organizations like the Barcelona Supercomputing Center in supporting this kind of work. Maria-Cristina, please.
Thank you very much, Dan. I guess you hear me. Yes, okay. So, okay. I'm the tech person here and I'm having problems. Okay, so I guess this is a bit, I didn't know what the other panelists were gonna talk about, but this kind of matches some of the points, the slides that they've talked about. I'm not gonna talk about policy and education. I think they're extremely important, but it's not something that technology can help a lot with, or at least not the most, so I'm just gonna skip over that part. And I'm gonna touch on the parts that have to do more with technologies in terms of analysis, prediction, and response. This is basically a reshuffling of what the panelists talk about during things that happen during the crisis, right before the crisis, and after the crisis. I organize them a little differently, but they basically refer to the same concepts. So one big area that technology can help with is response. When you have a problem, you have to figure out where the problem came from, whether you can fix it, what other places that it affects, to be able to notify and possibly provide alternatives. For example, I don't know, the electricity comes down, and you figure out, that that particular part of the town that lost electricity is connected to some hospital. So you have to warn them or provide a different way for them to get electricity, because you may have private residences without electricity for an hour or two, but you cannot have a hospital. The other thing that Dan talked about, Haiti and then the tsunamis in Southeast Asia, in those cases, being able to analyze and figure out what else has an effect on what just happened. For example, governance, right? So a tsunami hits, or what happened in Haiti, right? How can the government help? And how does the law and the structure that is in place help more or less to solve the problem? This is basically about all of this is about understanding the connections and formalizing our understanding about connections between different parts of the city, structure, events, people, companies, everything that happens in the city. So you can think of this as a model behind a possible urban platform, such as Ares talked about. So technologically speaking, one of the most interesting and relevant things here is semantic modeling, right? You have a semantic model of the city where you formally express what the concepts are in the city that you're interested in and how they're connected. And when something hits, you already have this model in place, and you have the data, the actual data that connects to the model. So you can actually figure out very quickly all these backward edges to figure out the causes, forward edges to figure out who's going to be affected, and lateral edges to figure out who else has an input on what just happened. So maybe they can help you. The second part that I'm going to talk about, which is basically both pre-event and post-event, is prediction. So prediction in a technical sense can mean one of several things. In the case of pre-event, just before the event, we talk about early warning. And pre-event longer term, in the past, we're talking about analyzing and studying and figuring out, trying to predict whether something is going to happen, and trying to make those parts of the system more resilient. I'm just going to jump to the next slide to show you what I'm talking about. Technology-wise, a lot of this, the work that happens in graph analysis and network analysis can help here. So if you look at this graph, for example, you see the local hubs, then you see, I don't think I have a, no, yeah. So you see the local hubs. If one of these hubs falls, comes down, then a whole lot of a network is going to come down. If you look at these nodes, for example, they look kind of isolated, but they actually make the connections between the different clusters of the graph. So if you have an image of what happens in the city and how things are connected as a graph, then you can apply network analysis to figure out what are the weakest links, what are the clusters that are weaker, like badly connected, and put the resources where it matters to make those parts more resilient. In terms of post-event, so the shock or the stress it happened, and you want to figure out how to help best. In the case of earthquakes, for example, it may not be clear, and usually it's not clear, what are the parts that are mostly hit, like worse hit. So you don't know exactly what is the most urgent, where to send help. So at our center, we actually implement earthquake simulators. This is a very heavy high-performance computing type of big data type of application. So what you have to, in order to create damage maps and figure out what is worse hit and send the right people to the right places, you have to have beforehand, way beforehand, a mesh of the city. So you have to know how the substrate is to be able to simulate what just happened and figure out where exactly, what are the points, what are all the damage maps for each of these people that are interested should be interested in responding to the crisis. Police, relief agencies, government. So these simulations are possible. They can happen very quickly. So when an earthquake hits, you can quickly run the simulator, and within 10 minutes you have the most, like the neuralgic points, and you can send the help where you need to. Of course, if you want to do this for, I don't know, a city in Africa or in South Asia where you don't know anything about the soil, this is not an option because you don't know what's going on underneath. So you maybe can make some probabilistic prediction, but you cannot do a deterministic prediction via simulation. The third area where I think technology can really help is building for resilience. So nothing has happened yet, and you're trying to build a place, a city, a country, whatever, that is more resilient. So you can do one of several things. You can use analysis via scenarios, and that's where semantic technologies help, because you have this graph and you can simulate something happening and figuring out how the indicators, for example, of resilience change values. You can, as you saw, do network analysis, not in the wake of an emergency, but beforehand when there's no problem. And you can use machine learning techniques. I don't want to use technical terms, but basically the idea is that there are cities in which you have a lot of data. There are cities in which you don't. But if you have a lot of data, then you can learn. You can learn things. You can figure out maybe what are patterns that are typical for when something is about to happen. Of course, you're not going to be able to have that for a tsunami, but maybe for a stress in the city, you may be able to have that. Not for a shock, but for a stress. I understand that that's the language. And there's also simulation when you build for resilience. For example, we have this simulator for pollution dispersal. So currently, pollution dispersal tools are of this type. So you basically see the types of pollutants at the city level, or maybe at the neighborhood level in the best case, but it's usually at city level because it's at least 1 kilometer resolution. What you would really like to have, it's something like that, where you model the city at the level of blocks. So these are the actual blocks in the city and the actual buildings with the correct heights and everything. And you want to have a simulation that tells you exactly on all the streets what is the level of the various pollutants. In order to do that, I'm way above, okay. So in order to do that, you basically integrate a lot of types of data. I'm not gonna go through this example, but you take, LiDAR data, topographic elevation, some measurements of the few sensors that you have in the city, weather, traffic data, and then you interpolate and you build a simulator. And maybe it's not evident, but you can use this to improve city operations. For example, let's say you want to cut a street or change traffic on a part of the city because you think it's going to improve something. You run the simulator and you see that it's actually not improving. It's worse, or you see opportunities that you haven't seen before. And the other thing, you can provide services to the citizens. So a lot of people run in the cities, and I would like to know which are the days and where are the points in the city where I shouldn't run because of the contamination levels. And just to conclude, I think technology can help a lot, but the success depends on several things. It depends on the fact that specialists, domain specialists, help to capturing knowledge, to build, an urban platform that represents, that models the city, for example, in what I've talked about, and it hinges on obtaining data. And the fact is that, well, we in research work with data that is clean, generally. But the fact is data is not clean, it's actually faulty most of the time, and it's incomplete. So you have to work with that. So you have to have data somehow. Maybe you don't have it, maybe you cannot measure it, but you can approximate it somehow. And you have to define where are the points where you can actually work with approximate data and still get useful information. And in a city, like in cities in parts where you don't have this data, for example, you may have an indicator of resilience that a specialist tell you, well, it takes this 10 parameters as input to compute this indicator. But maybe you don't have any measurements. Maybe in Barcelona you can measure these 10 parameters, or maybe you just already have them. But you go to, I don't know, Mozambique and you don't have them. So what do? Well, if you had data about other cities, you can do machine learning and you can figure out that of these 10 parameters, maybe only 2 are really important to approximate at a level that it's reasonable enough. So that way you know where to put your resources, that you just have to measure these 2 things, not the whole 10. And anyway, I think there's hope because one of the biggest problems and biggest critiques that IT people get in smart cities is that we run away with the technology and we don't really respond to needs. And that's partly true. I think we don't have a common language between technical people and the people that know what the problems are. So that's part of the problem as well. But I think resilience is something that is more clear than smart city. So I think we have a better chance of making some kind of a difference. Thank you.
And thank you very much. Maria-Cristina, thanks very much. Look, we're rapidly, in fact, over time. So we won't have a lot of time for discussion with you. But I'd like you to just once more thank every one of the panelists that are up here for their very interesting presentations that have taken us through a very wide array of entry points into the world of recovering cities and the aftermath of different kinds of crisis. The last point I'd like you to think about, and from Maria-Cristina's presentation, and this answers some of the questions that have come up here, is that it's not always necessary to have all the information in order to do this. So how is this kind of technology applicable in Maputo or in a small town in central India or other parts of the world that are on development trajectories? And the truth is really that you can do a huge amount with what you actually have. And no city, no human settlement that I've ever worked in around the world has an absolute dearth of knowledge or information. There is always knowledge and information. It can be coordinated, it can be gathered using techniques that Alfonso talked about. It can be fed into systems management software, similar to what Safder is talking about. It can ultimately lead to where we've gotten with the city of Barcelona in their journey towards a more resilient city. And we can rely on organizations like the Barcelona Supercomputer Center that is actually engaging directly with organizations like the UN and others in helping to create the tools to enable universally cities to embark on a resilience agenda irrespective of the point at which they do that. And I want to thank you personally, all of you, for your presentations, and all of you for coming and listening to us for this last hour. Thanks very much, everybody.